Welcome to the Startup Growth Podcast. I'm your host, Brent Edwards. On today's episode, we are analyzing the strategic architecture of ecosystem commercialization, high stakes public affairs management, and translating deep tech innovation into venture capital market presence. In 2026, positioning a breakthrough technology for rapid adoption requires moving past hyper-technical documentation to engineer accessible, human-centered narratives that align researchers, corporate buyers, and institutional funding bodies into a single growth pipeline. We're delighted today that Alicia Pereira, who is the Vice President of Marketing and Communications at OCI, the Ontario Centre of Innovation, is joining us. Alicia is an elite communications, reputation management, and public affairs executive who has more than 2 decades of experience in leading organizations. Prior to her executive leadership at OCI, she directed senior public affairs, advocacy, and issues management portfolios for the Children's Aid Society of Toronto and the Ontario Human Rights Commission. She began her career in broadcast journalism with CTV and established an elite foundation in nationwide media storytelling. So let's dive into our conversation with Alicia. Alicia, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Great. It's such a privilege to get to know you and have you with us on our episode today. As we were talking about, done had some connections with OCI and some of my past lives, and really appreciative of the work that you do in terms of building innovation and working with businesses to help Ontario stay on the cutting edge of technology. So it's we're really interested to hear your perspective on some of the topics we're going to discuss today.
Thank you. Yeah, it's our pleasure. We have a great team here at OCI.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I guess the first topic I want to talk about is for the province of Ontario, and I know we're talking to a national audience, but we're going to be focusing on the province of Ontario today, around the structural innovation advantage that the province has. And I know from my previous work that there's a lot of world-class scientific researchers and brilliant engineers across academia and the private sector and not-for-profits. But I also have learned that many of these pioneers really struggle to explain some of their breakthrough technologies when they're dealing with outside commercial partners. So I'm wondering if you could tell us, Alicia, what role OCI, the Ontario Centre of Innovation, plays in helping to turn lab research into commercial success.
You kind of said it right from the go. Ontario itself is home to, I'd say, some of the world's leading researchers, post-secondary institutions, and entrepreneurs. Canada in general is really thriving in post-secondary institutions. And one of the things I love most about OCI is that we're really focused on helping great ideas become real world impact, and turn into real world impact. So OCI really acts as a connector and an accelerator in terms of bringing together researchers and startups, industry partners, and even investors, as well as government, to really help move technology from lab to commercialization. And I think from a communication standpoint, here at OCI, we're really helping innovators tell their stories. So, a breakthrough technology, yes, it may be transformative, but if investors, if customers, and partners, and even policymakers don't understand its value, the impact can therefore be limited, right? And so for us, that's why storytelling is such an important part of commercialization. At OCI, we help shine a spotlight on Ontario innovators and help demonstrate how innovation is not only improving lives, but creating jobs and overall strengthening our economy here in Ontario.
Yeah, the whole element of storytelling, and found that during my time working in the public policy world through the chamber. It's so critical that you can have a breakthrough technology, and it's also interesting that you mentioned about policymakers, because sometimes it's a forgotten group of stakeholders, even though they're so prominent, to make sure that they're on board with not just supporting your own innovation, but the innovation of people in your ecosystem and your industry, because you really want your whole industry to grow. And if that's growing, that's going to help your own business, I would expect.
Absolutely. And for us, it's, we have the best job. We're able to kind of be the cheerleaders for these amazing companies that are here based in Ontario. I think people have probably heard, people like Premier Ford and people like Minister Fedeli really talk about how incredible our companies are here, but we really do also get to be able to kind of be in day out and day in with these companies, and they are thriving. Ontario really is in a very critical moment right now, and we are producing some amazing companies with amazing innovation.
Yeah, I think people underestimate the importance of cheerleaders, because we're competing against the entire world, and we need all, just like we saw World Cup, we need everyone behind and cheering
It's all hands.
on the team, because it
Yeah.
really makes a difference in the performance on the field, right? So
Yeah. It's
yeah,
an
it's
all
just
Canada
interesting.
approach, right?
Absolutely, because there's so many ecosystems and connections between the different provinces, regardless of where the final product or ideas comes to fruition. Yeah, it's translating all these complex features into clear commercialization. It's really important to ensure that we get the cross-border investment that they deserve. The next
Yeah, and I
topic I
think
wanted
too,
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
even if I can add, I think too, it's also looking um at the next generation, right? Like those upcoming entrepreneurs, those upcoming leaders who have that spark or that idea. You look at these amazing institutions coming out of Ontario, or that are based out of Ontario. So, UFT, the work they're doing with AI is incredible. York University, there's some really incredible companies that are and researchers that are coming out of there as well. So, I think being able to at OCI work with and highlight the work that is being done in those institutions for that next generation is really important as well.
Yeah, and Ontario's got it's more post-secondary institutions than any of the other individual provinces. I was able to work with quite a few of the post-secondary institutions, especially around events, to help connect different members of the ecosystem. But I know that's something that OCI also does a lot in terms of connecting founders, investors, and industry leaders. Um, one of the more prominent uh, conferences is your DiscoveryX. Can you
Mhm.
tell us a little bit about how OCI's DiscoveryX differs from typical conferences, and how does your team work to boosting Ontario's competitiveness through the event?
Sure. And thanks for bringing up DiscoveryX. It's very close to my heart. DiscoveryX is really where Ontario's kind of innovation ecosystem comes together once a year in April. So unlike many events that focus kind of solely on speakers or just networking, DiscoveryX really creates opportunities for actions. And what I mean by that is, entrepreneurs can meet investors, researchers can connect with industry and with government. A lot of what we hear from people who have attended and still continue to attend Discovery is it's where I made my first insert,
Mm,
deal, my first
mhm,
connection, my first whatever it
yeah,
is, right? Partnership. And so for
mhm,
us, that's really thrilling to be able to have some small part in any entrepreneur's journey. This past April, we welcomed nearly 2,000 attendees,
wow,
280 exhibitors, and we facilitated more than 560 investor meetings in just a day and a half, 2 days. And we generated over 31,000 networking connections through our Click technology that we work with to provide all of the attendees. And so, these aren't just event metrics. When I say these numbers, I think they really represent, each number represents the opportunities, the partnerships, and potential future economic activity. So, I think for me as a communications professional, looking at DiscoveryX as one of Ontario's really like most powerful storytelling platforms is important. I think it gives innovators real visibility to help raise their profile, to help attract investment, and to showcase Ontario to the world as a global innovation leader. We host delegations internationally, and we really generate, I would say, millions of media impressions to help tell the story of Ontario's innovation well beyond the walls of our conference.
Wow, I mean, walls of the conference, like we have 2,000 people and 280
It's
exhibitors and
buzzing.
31,000, you know, networking connections. Like you're actually having business done, on the floor of the conference, which is amazing to hear. And I'm sure all the founders and the investors and the policymakers, really appreciate having everything under one roof and ability to put together contracts and build partnerships. That's amazing. And I
Yeah, and having
think I've
great
got a,
having
yeah,
great partners and sponsors, and really working closely with them to be able to give our pitch competition winners monetary prizes is great, and that's only done in part with our sponsors. And so we really work closely to curate an entire 2-day event for both the exhibitors and the attendees, and everyone who takes part in it. So it really is a great joy for us to kind of see those 2 days come together. Nobody really sees all the work that goes into doing that. We're already starting our work now for April 2027, but we know it's going to be a phenomenal event with some great speakers and panels and pitches and pitch competition winners and all that good stuff.
yeah, I've got a bit of a glimpse in terms of how much work is involved in putting on these multi-day conferences, but I think we both know that the day that people pick up their registration forms and the lights go on and you see the names of the partners and lights, and it makes it all worthwhile. All the late
Right.
nights and hard work, but yeah, and
And a
it's
great
all
team.
worthwhile. Yeah, exactly. You've got a great team to put them on. You were talking about some media impressions about the storytelling. So I want to get some idea in terms of from you around how storytelling can help technology companies communicate their value. And I do have a specific question. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you the question, then we've got a message for our listeners, and then they'll come back to you for the answer. So I guess the question would be looking for you to answer, Alicia, is how human-centered storytelling is essential for startups and how you would guide technical founders to adopt it. So, and we're going to have a message now for our listeners. So, to technology innovators, manufacturers, and life sciences leaders watching, turning innovation into commercial success requires more than great technology. The Ontario Centre of Innovation helps Ontario businesses accelerate growth through funding programs, research partnerships, and commercialization support. By connecting innovators with the resources and networks they need, OCI helps transform promising ideas into market ready solutions. Ready to scale your next innovation? Visit oc-innovation.ca to explore the opportunities available for your business. So, back to our conversation with Alicia Pereira from OCI. We're talking about storytelling and how important it is for startups. What advice would you guide technical founders in terms of adopting storytelling into their marketing strategy?
The most successful innovators aren't necessarily the ones, in my opinion, with the most sophisticated technology, right? They're the ones that understand that people just they don't buy technology, they buy outcomes, right? And they buy
Mhm.
they're invested in someone who can kind of clearly explain the problem that they're working to solve and the impact that they are creating. And, whenever I work with founders here at OCI, I really encourage them to kind of move away from that technical aspect and technical specifications and focus more on the human story. So I can say to them, think about like who benefits, what challenges are you solving, how does someone's life or business or community really improve because of this innovation that you're presenting them with. Everybody loves a good story, not just communicators. And so, I think investors remember stories, customers remember stories, and journalists, as a former journalist, journalists remember stories as well, right? And so that's something for founders to always remember. The best innovation stories, and I think in general, really connect complex technology to real world impact. And that's where that communication becomes a growth strategy rather than just a marketing function that you kind of say, okay, we'll put that off to marketing. It really is a growth strategy for the company.
Yeah, I mean, we're all hardwired for stories. We all grew up
Yeah.
listening to Once Upon a Time and Happily Ever After. But it's really important. And work I've been doing with small businesses as well is just to, again, get beyond the raw engineering specifications to focus on like, how is it actually changing the life experience of who their end user is, like what problem are they trying to sell, and that's really where the technology turns into like a really compelling asset or uh,
Yeah. And also
something that
just
people would
kind
want to
of
buy into. Yeah,
remembering that these founders, they are so close, like they're so close to this technology, like this is their baby. But reminding them, how would you explain this to your mom, or how would you explain this technology to your child? Like make it very easy for people to grasp and understand. And again, cater it to how it affects them and how they benefit from it. And I think that then kind of breeds more interest from everyone involved.
yeah, I think it's one where if when you're the developer of the product, like you've been telling yourself the same story for months or years in terms of developing it, but a lot of the
Right.
people that you're actually talking to, they're actually hearing that story for the first time, and it's going to take them a while to like understand and appreciate it to the level that you do. So that's why storytelling is so
Right.
important. Even if they've told the story 1,000 times already, they need to continue telling it to a broader audience.
Yeah,
So
and I think too, it's more important now more so than ever, right? With the rise of AI, and people kind of really deferring to AI to do things, even with what we see with our analytics, on the back end of our thing, like people care more about human emotion, and you don't want to lose the human centric side to any of the stories, because that's what people ultimately resonate with, right? And so I think it's really important to be able to communicate that to founders. And that's also why communications is so important, and to have, someone who's a communicator on your team being able to tell your story.
exactly. Well, people buy an emotion and justify in logic. They may think they're doing something different, but that's usually how it works. um, at least that's my personal opinion on that. So, um, maybe we talk a little bit about just the impact on small, medium-sized enterprises. So a lot of them are trying to increase their visibility and grow their digital presence, as you mentioned. Um, what do you have some practical tips for some small businesses in terms of how could they raise their market visibility and communicate their value when a lot of them are on a very lean budgets?
Sure. I think I'd say three things. My first kind of piece of advice is really to stop trying to be everywhere, right? So focus on being relevant instead of being everywhere. And
Hmm.
what I mean by that is really define what makes your company unique and understand your audience, and consistently communicate your value proposition to that audience. So that's firstly what I would say. I think secondly, I would say, really leverage thought leadership. So founders are often sitting on valuable expertise that their partners, their customers, and media, and frankly, want to hear. So, I would say share insights, participate in, industry conversations or roundtables, and build that credibility. And then thirdly, I would say tell your customer stories, right? The proof is in the pudding. So nothing builds trust faster than showing how you've helped someone solve a problem. And so, don't underestimate the power of earned media. Strategic
Mhm.
partnerships are really valuable. They are so valuable. And social platforms like LinkedIn is really great to also help build up things like your thought leadership. From my perspective, some of the most successful visible campaigns that I have seen have been built
Mhm.
on just being authentic, being consistent, and really having that strong storytelling
Mhm.
component to it, not these huge, massive budgets.
Yeah. Well, I think people want to hear good news stories. At least that's my
Correct.
experience. And thought leadership, or even though we're besieged by so much information, we're always looking. We wanted a good story to tell and relate, and especially about the problems about the country in terms of companies succeeding. So I think we want to. There's kind of a ground mass of support for having Canadian businesses succeed, and I think great storytelling probably can help cut through some of the noise that's out there to land with the audiences that want to listen.
Absolutely.
Um, so the last topic I want to talk to you a bit about, Alicia, is exploring how you see emerging technologies shaping the future of business and innovation. And this is around specific emerging tech trends in the province of Ontario that excite you and your team, and how should the workforce be preparing for them? So it's a broad question, but I'll let you tackle it in terms of how you wish.
Sure. So I would say Ontario is really at the forefront of, several transformational technologies right now. AI, as everyone knows, we just kind of spoke about it. It continues to really be a major growth area, but I'm equally excited about, quantum technologies, advanced manufacturing, life sciences, critical technologies, and even, next generation mobility solutions that Ontario is producing. And I think what's particularly
Mhm.
exciting to me is how these technologies are all starting to kind of converge on each other. So, AI is transforming healthcare, and quantum is reshaping computing. Advanced manufacturing is, more and more becoming faster and more intelligent and connected, right? And so I think for the workforce, technical skills will remain important, of course, but I think those human skills that we've talked about will become even more valuable. So adaptability, creativity, critical thinking, collaboration, of course, and communications are all going to differentiate future leaders, in my opinion. Um, I also believe, of course, in storytelling. I think that storytelling is really going to become a critical business skill. And I think having the ability to translate complex issues and topics, or just complexity in general, into kind of clarity is going to be increasingly important as technology continues to evolve on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's the whole clarity and communicating it clearly. It's It sounds very straightforward, but it is
It's
actually
not.
it's very difficult. It's an art and a science to be able to do that and determine what
Yeah.
is actually most important. Um, yeah, it's something I've struggled with in terms of my own career and trying to articulate some of these key points. But like you said, it's one of those human skills that everyone's going to need to be able to do in the today and in the future. in addition to all the
Absolutely.
digital literacy and everything else that is important. But at least we have a lot of people with a lot of skills, and to ensure that Ontario is going to maintain its status as really a premier global hub for innovation. And thanks some to the work that OCI is doing. I've got one final wrap up question, which is, if
Sure.
you were a small business owner who's listening, what could they do today to optimize communications and tell a compelling story this quarter?
I think focusing less on what you do and more on the why, right? Like, why
Hmm.
does it matter? So, many organizations spend far too much time talking about their products and their features and their services. The companies to me that stand out are the ones that communicate the impact, right? So, yes,
Hmm.
you want to talk about those products and those features and those services, but you can do it in a different way by focusing and centering the messaging on the impact that they're creating. So if I were to give, one challenge to, every maybe business owner listening to this right now, it's, take a look at your website, take a look at your social media, or even your next kind of customer pitch presentation or presentation, and ask yourself, would someone understand the problem that we solve and why it matters within that first, 30, 40 seconds? And if the answer to that is yes, then I think you're already ahead of most organizations. And if the answer is no, then let's look at refining that a little bit, right? So, from my perspective, I think great communications isn't about saying more, it's about making your story matter and making it make sense to people in really easy and kind of tangible ways.
That's excellent advice. Thank you. It's advice I wish I'd had like 20 years ago in my career. So, but thank you for sharing it with us today. So this is, really an exceptional reminder that, creating, impact on the market is really what's important and what the market can understand and trust. Alicia, thank you so much for joining us today on this episode, and look forward to connecting with you again soon.
Well, thanks for having me, and it was a pleasure getting to know you.
Thanks, everyone. This has been the Startup Growth Podcast. What you've heard is a master class in translating, hyper technical innovations into human narratives. We've talked about storytelling and making impact, and understanding what your why is really important for small businesses. We've also heard about the massive success of DiscoveryX, which is OCI's annual conference in 2026, which will be back again in April 2027. Opportunities to secure capital interest, and connect with the ecosystem in Ontario. And also, we've learned how OCI is accelerating made in Ontario technologies globally in 2026. I want to thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Startup Growth Podcast. I'm your host, Brent Edwards, and I encourage you to be sure to subscribe and visit startupgrowth.ca for more insights, resources, and conversations designed to help founders and businesses scale with clarity. We'll see you again next time.